Hey,
Hey, hello.
we already have a first question for you,
All
but
right, all right, okay.
it's okay. I
Okay.
think we'll just start with the
Oh,
introductions now.
that's fast. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so let me introduce myself. So basically, I'm okay. So my name is
Oh,
Gibson.
maybe okay. Maybe I can just share a bit more about our students
Okay.
first, and then we'd love to
Okay,
know.
sure.
Okay, great.
All right.
So here we have a collection of students,
Hmm.
mostly from our batches 2 and 3. So
Okay.
somewhere in between 3 to 6 months of graduate. Some are very close to graduation. Some are roughly 3 months away from graduation from the bootcamp course.
Okay. Okay.
And so excited to start new careers and get into the tech industry.
Hmm.
And almost everybody is a career switcher, meaning that they did
Ah.
not, nobody here studied computer science in
Hmm.
university.
Hmm.
Everybody comes from other disciplines like animation or design or teaching or analytics, or we even have some students who are pre-university here who are
Oh.
joining us and getting
Okay.
ahead to be able to do some tech internships in uni.
Okay.
And so students are typically keen to hear about what is the industry like and
Hmm.
what is the day in the life of your job as a software engineer in your particular company.
Hmm.
The idea with the Q&As is to give students exposure to a variety of industries, a variety of types of companies and seniorities of the engineers as well. So thanks so much for being here today and for sharing your
Okay.
experiences with us. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so let me just a quick introduction. So basically, I'm the engineering lead of Lenskart Singapore. So Lenskart is actually it's a unicorn startup in India. So Singapore is like their first branch out of Asia. So we actually the Singapore team is actually supposed to support the Southeast Asia team when we start launching in multiple countries. So I'm kind of like mid-career. So actually my first career I was in the Navy. So I was in the SAF for about 6 years. Then during when I was doing my 6 year stint in the Navy, around the 3 year mark, I actually switched over and that I want to become a software developer. So I actually did a part-time degree at SIM studying computing science. So it's like a 3 years part-time course. It's like basically it's like every day after work I'll rush home for my tutorials or rush to university for my lectures kind of thing. Then around 2003 I graduated, and that's also when I started to work in the software engineering industry. So it was, as you know, SCF pays actually pretty well. Then when I joined the outside world, it was actually quite a drastic pickup of around 40%, I would say. So because SCF they pay for your food, they pay for your uniform, everything. So from there, I took a drastic pickup around 30 to 40%. Then I started working my way up from doing software engineering up to where I am now, which is still in the engineering field. So along the way, I worked with startups. Then I also did my own consultancy, and where I help people in Singapore to develop mobile apps and websites. And I had a team of 3 to 4 developers in Ukraine. So they were just the developers. Then in Singapore, I was doing the things like the sales, marketing, project management with all this with my clients in Singapore. Then after that, I think like somewhere around 4 or 5 years ago, I started by working in startup because my friend actually was working in the startup. So he said that his company needed a CTO. So I actually joined the company doing e-commerce forward delivery. Then I was there for about probably close to 1 year, 8 months, somewhere around there. Then I joined another startup which is also doing food delivery. I was there about somewhere around 2.5 years. Then I switched over to my current job, which is Lenskart, where I was basically I'm just heading up the technical team and hiring people for the team in Singapore.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe we can open it up to maybe we should. I don't know if we should start with. Maybe you can start. We can start with the .NET question. Porter, we were just wondering because I think maybe Porter, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I was looking. I was going through your LinkedIn, and I saw that you jump from like different types of companies. So start from .NET, and then go into game development, then web development, then app development. So I was like wondering, was it the .NET that held all this together? Because you did like C# and all this, right? Thinking. I was wondering, what was the core thing?
Okay, so the .NET part, I would say is like it happens because there was something called first get a job, don't care about what kind of technologies that you're going to use. So that time, I think they were starting out NTUC Income, so they needed developers. So I told them like, okay, I don't know .NET, I know Java, but I told them, okay, Java is very similar to .NET because it's a compiled language, then the kind of thing, and it can run anywhere. So if you are willing to hire me, I can learn .NET. Then, so I think that time when I was when they offered me a contract, I had about 1 or 2 months worth of time where I was before I started. So basically for that 1 month, I just borrowed like 2 or 3 .NET books. Some of them I actually got from my friends who are actually doing .NET already. So I told them like, okay, I need some good recommendations on .NET book. So for the 1 month, I just took that book. Then I did all the exercises in the book. I read the book as much as possible, go through the chapters, that kind of thing. Then so that on the first day itself, I was be able prepared to actually start working on something start working on some of the .NET work that they gave me to. But of course, I think being a big company, I actually spent the first 2 or 3 days just waiting for them to set up my PC. Then so for the 2-3 days, I was just waiting for them to set up my email account, set up my PC. Then I brought those 2 or 3 books to the office. Then while waiting for them, I'll just read the books and then surf the internet on how to do .NET applications. Then that's how. So the first initial part is basically a very steep learning curve because it was a totally different language. But I just had to put in the hours just to get up to speed so that within the first month, I'm actually very productive compared with the rest of the team itself.
Nice.
Wow.
Yep. Then of course, game development was something that I actually wanted to do for a long time. So I switched over to a game development company.
Oh, so by switching over, you have to learn a whole new set, a whole new language.
Yes, correct. So that time I was still quite young. So basically, I can spend like hours and night just coding and doing exercises, that kind of thing. And that time, there's no such thing as Stack Overflow. So it's like everything is all just search from blogs or websites or go library, borrow books, that kind of thing to read.
Wow.
Yeah, so the initial part is quite tough, but I think if you put in enough effort and hard work, it pays off.
Wow. That's a lot of languages. That's why I'm very impressed. Will you say that there's some sort of like common denominator with all of this programming languages?
Yes. Okay, because these programming languages are all like in the same that they are not like functional languages. So like a lot of these languages are .NET, Java, PHP.
Oops. Oh.
This is where all the good stuff is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Just when all the
go to another language. Yeah, you want to jump over to another language is actually easy because the syntax is different. It's like learning English and French. So it's like English, once you know English, you want to learn French is a bit easy because it's Romanized, but it's a bit harder. Let's say you want to learn English and then you want to learn Japanese. The syntax, everything is all different itself. So like Java, .NET, PHP, all that, the languages are similar. So syntax is different, but then there are a lot of commonality between these languages.
Wow. Thank you for that.
So like, speaking about that, right? Languages and stuff. Is it important for you when you're hiring someone that they have to already know the technologies or languages that you are using in your company? Or are you guys like open to like hiring people who don't know the language yet, but they have programming experience? Say for example, you're using React, but they don't know React, they know Vue instead. Then they're like, oh,
okay.
I can learn React in a while. Yeah.
That's a very good question because at Lenskart, one of my recent hires was a guy. He told me upfront he doesn't know React, but he knows Vue. Then he showed us his project doing Vue. It's like, okay, it's actually pretty good. It's a pretty good Vue project. Then I know that Vue and React is actually kind of similar. So I told him, okay. Then we offered him a job basically. We offered him at the price that he wanted, at the salary and the package that he wanted. So we told him, okay, I can see that you know Vue quite well, and I know that React is actually similar to Vue, just that some parts of it is different, but like probably like 70-80% is very similar. So we'll take you on board even though you do not React. Then, but only one condition is that before you join us, because he needs to take about 3 weeks of notice. So I told you that before that, you just you just try to learn as much about React as possible, so that on the first day itself, right, you have some knowledge and ready to go already. But of course, you need to know JavaScript itself, lah.
Yeah. So what if he doesn't know JavaScript? What if he knows say Java instead?
Okay, so Java and JavaScript is actually very different, although the name it has Java inside. But of course, then I think in that case, Bobby will not be a good fit. But if let's say he knows JavaScript well, and we need a React engineer or we need a Node.js engineer, yeah, we are willing to give him a chance if he can pass through our technical tests. Because I think Bobby, okay, maybe I need because for our technical test, although we mentioned that it will be tested using React, but if we see that the candidate does not know React, but they know JavaScript and they can implement the same solution in the technical test using JavaScript itself, then we are still willing to take him on board.
I see. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh.
Could you elaborate more on the technical test? So it seems like there's a lot of emphasis on the technical test when hiring at Lenskart. Yeah.
Okay, so technical test for Lenskart. Okay, so there's actually 2 rounds. One is a MCQ test. So that one is actually just to establish baseline that you know your JavaScript stuff, like you know how to declare variables, you know how to declare a function, that kind of thing, the syntax kind of. Then the other one is live coding. The live coding will actually be more about things like your thought process, like making sure that you actually know how to write the code and you know how to actually think through a coding problem itself. So we give you a problem, you have to articulate what's the problem statement and tell us like, okay, what is your thought process on how you intend to actually find a solution. Then start writing it in JavaScript. So there were a few candidates that we told them like, okay, so what you're familiar with, React or Express, or you're familiar with Vue? Then they say, oh, I know there's sometimes I think a few of them say like, okay, I know this role requires React, but then I'm familiar with Vue, so can I use Vue instead? So, yeah, we told them, yeah, okay, no problem, use Vue instead. Then sometimes say like, okay, I'm not so familiar with React, but can I use just normal JavaScript to approach to solve the issue? And I say, okay, then you can use JavaScript itself. So the baseline is you need JavaScript and you need to know like how to solve the problem that we give you using JavaScript. So then after that, the rest is let's say hiring for going through like the culture fit interview, that kind of thing.
And what do you look for in culture fit?
Okay, so culture fit for Lenskart, we'll be looking for more of like, okay, we are looking for people that are actually able to communicate well. Then they have things like say, they want to work in a company where people collaborate, people cooperate. We don't look for people that just sit there and just code 24/7, that kind of thing. Then they don't communicate. Because we want people they are able to work well in the team. Because Lenskart, the digital team is actually very small. So we need people to work well together as a whole. So they are able to communicate well. They are able to assist each other in supporting them in, let's say, when there's some sort of need. So let's say like, maybe I'm too busy to do a pull request or to do a code review. Maybe someone more senior can actually help to assist in doing code reviews or that kind of stuff.
And when you say communicate well, like what can we break that down a little? Something Rocket Academy we think about as well when we choose students for our course. We want them to be strong communicators, but just curious from your perspective, what elements go into this idea of communicating well?
Okay, so communicating well, I would say is probably something like, okay, are they willing to teach or mentor interns or junior developers, and are they able to communicate their point of view well, in terms of say like why you should structure your code in this manner, or why you should implement the architecture in this way, that kind of thing. So they are able to give feedback, and also they are able to consider the pros and cons and say like, okay, if I do it in this way, it's good in this aspect, but then the cons is probably there's some other issues that maybe further down the road there'll be some issues, or if you implement in this way, there'll be good and bad. The good and part is this, the bad part is this. So they're able to like sell their idea across.
Awesome.
Okay. Anyone has any other questions?
Yeah, hi, Gibson. Joe here.
Okay, hello.
Thanks for joining us. Actually, my question is from the previous part you mentioned that if somebody knows, say, JavaScript or React, you're open, to give them an opportunity to solve the problem in that particular using particular language, right? what skill set other than the few you mentioned you look for in a candidate when you are hiring for Lenskart?
Okay, so for hiring for Lenskart, I think so they are able to actually articulate well their thought process on, let's say, problem solving, and also tell us, okay, so let's say we're given a problem statement to do during the live coding, they're able to tell us, okay, so like say they're able to say, like, they are supposed to verbalize their thoughts, saying like, okay, if I do it this way, so this is how I approach it. This is how I approach the situation and the problem statement, and I'll do it this way because I want to do it fast first, and then I'll optimize it later. Or they say that, okay, I'll do it in another way so that I'll do it another way so that actually I can it's a very fast way for me to actually get the solution. Then optimization will be later, or I can do it in a not efficient manner, that kind of thing. So they are able to verbalize their thoughts during the interview process, so that they actually able to communicate to us, the interviewers, that, okay, so this is what the candidate is thinking of. Because sometimes we have the candidates where they just stare at the screen, then I'm not sure, like, are they thinking, or maybe there's a screen lag or whatever, the screen froze up because it's like I don't see anything moving about. Sometimes I'll be asking, like, sorry, are you there? Is my internet lagging or whatever? Then there are the good ones that tell us, okay, so they'll tell us, okay, so I create a function to do this. Then from the function, I declare a variable for this part of the statement. And then after that, I need to call this API because this is what is required for me, that kind of thing. So they are verbalize, when they verbalize as they go through the statement, actually able to get an idea of how they do their development.
Okay, so yeah, if I'm understanding is correct, then it is like it boils down to over communication is better than just being in a shallow and then just coding, right?
Yes, correct. So I'll take it as like it's like how, like, when your lecturer is actually telling you like how to solve a problem in maths class, or like he tell you like, okay, line by line is x plus y equals to this, then you multiply by this kind of thing. So it's like he write out on the whiteboard, then he tell you line by line what is happening, so that you are able to actually understand it. So that's how I actually teach my interns. So when I do, like, run them through some architectural solutions with them, how to, on some technical problems, on, I'll tell them, like, okay, so this is how the solution should be, then this is how you should approach it line by line, so that they actually understand line by line what's happening and they have better understanding of it.
Got it. Thank you so much. Any other technical skills which you look for other than the problem solving in a particular language or anything like?
Okay. Okay, I think probably, okay, so programming is one aspect. If they are able to demonstrate that they have very deep, very I'll say a very strong passion for tech programming. That means they tell me that, okay, so every week they listen to this podcast, or they read this, they subscribe to these websites about programming. Then I know that actually they have a passion for programming, because they know that programming is not something that always be the language, the frameworks, all that will change over time. Like for me, when I started out, it was .NET 2.0. Now it's, I think, .NET 5.0, something like that. And that time I started out, there's no Swift, there was no iOS, no iPhone. But all these things I actually learned over the years. So they need to be able to tell me that, okay, they are actually they have a passion for development. They bother to keep track on what's the latest advances every year, or new frameworks, new technologies come out year on year, and like how they keep track on it. Do they read blogs? Do they read books? Do they read articles? Kind of thing. Yeah, because some candidates we interviewed, they tell me that I asked them like some newer technology that happened like over 2 or 3 years ago. They are unable to articulate that they know this technology, because they just tell me that they just know programming, which is probably like the baseline of what we require in a candidate. But if they are able to tell me that they've heard of these new technologies, or they play around with it, or they know like how it works, then at least that gives a value add to the candidate when they come for the interview.
Thank you so much. That was quite a valuable input. Thank you.
Okay.
Like I said, the live coding sounds a lot like pair programming. I'm wondering if you guys...
Sorry, the what?
The live coding test that you do sounds a little bit like pair programming.
Correct. I said that the live coding, it's only one person coding only. Like pair programming is normally it's like 2-person programming. So it's like one person code, then the other person look for a mistake. Then after that they'll switch over. I mean, like I code one function, then after that first is finished, then you do the other function. Then they'll alternate here and there. But I tried pair programming. It's very good, but it's quite mentally draining because after like 8 hours of pair your brain is basically just burn out. Then it's like mentally you're just tired. But it's a very good and useful way, especially for the younger developers. You have a better understanding of how the older developers, they are able to structure their thoughts in terms of programming. They'll say like, okay, you don't do this, you don't name your variable this way because there may be some problem this way, or you don't structure your code in this way because it may not be efficient, or it may be slow when you have a big number of when you have a big number of variables to process, that kind of thing.
Okay. Do you guys do pair programming at Lenskart?
Pair programming right now don't have. I used to do it when it was still back in office, but now with this with this COVID situation, I've not done pair programming. Back when, because our office is at Funan, we work. So with my interns, I'll just like sometimes sit next to them, I'll just see their code, then I'll just say, okay, so this one need to change, or this one you need to refactor the code, or you need to rename the variables, kind of thing. But now what I do is I just do like code review. So when they commit, I'll see the code, then I'll just leave a comment in GitHub saying like, okay, this code need to change, or this thing you need to refactor to make it neater, that kind of thing.
Cool.
What's a day in the life of a junior developer in Lenskart?
Okay, so the day of life as a junior developer is Lenskart. Okay, basically it's like, okay, so every morning now it's around every morning, so it's around 10 a.m.
Yeah.
So we start work around 9:30, but I don't really foresee that 9:30 you have to check in, check out, that kind of thing. So I just make it sure that 10 a.m. they have to be online for a Zoom call. So the Zoom call, I'll go through things like, okay, yesterday what you have done, then any problems, then today what are you going to do, any problems, then after that it takes about 5-10 minutes, then I'll just say, then I'll ask them, okay, do you have any technical issues that you want that any of them in the group needs to discuss with me? So right now I have 2 interns. So sometimes like one of the interns say, oh, I have this technical issue, I'm not sure how to fix. So I say, okay, then after the call, I'll tell him like, so after the call we have a separate one-on-one call. Then after that I'll have a one-on-one call with the intern. I say, okay, so what's the problem you're facing? Then tell me like, oh, this JavaScript that doesn't work properly, or I cannot get this function to this library to integrate well. So then I'll walk through him like sometimes it's not a technical issue, sometimes it's just like how it approaches the problem. Sometimes he say like, oh, this library got problem, I couldn't integrate well, and there's some weird bugs in the library. Then I tell him like, okay, so this one is, so I'll tell him like, this is not a programming issue. Then I told him like, stepping back, maybe you can consider using another library instead of using this same library because it's popular. So I tell him like, maybe there's other alternatives to solve the same problem. Instead of just trying to fix the problem in the library, you just use another library itself that can have the similar outcome or similar output that you want. Or sometimes I'll just go through them with like some of the coding styles, the kind of thing. I'll just say like, okay, so this line of code, I noticed that you always name your variable in this way, but we need to change the variable naming to follow a standardized format. Because I tell them like, imagine only 2 interns and you have 2 different naming conventions. Imagine what happens if, let's say, you have 10 people in the group and then all of them have the same naming convention, and then the code will be very messy. Right, so after that, so after the call is probably about 10 minutes, so it's about 10-15, then I'll just leave them to do the coding at the end towards the whole day. Then maybe like somewhere around afternoon or what, I'll just tell them like, say, hey, can you just check in your code to Git so I can just take a look and do some code review. Then after that, I'll just leave them to do the coding. Because I know as a developer, you sometimes when you're coding your headphones on or whatever, you just want to focus on your code. So you don't want to be interrupted by any unnecessary meetings, that kind of thing. So I won't interrupt them unless it's really necessary.
Hi, Gibson.
Yes.
Samantha. Just wanted to know more about the kind of problems you're solving at Lenskart. Like, what kind of features that you're working on here in Singapore, how you collaborate on like larger products with your larger team.
Oh, okay. So at Lenskart, as you know, I think Lenskart, we sell eyewear in Singapore. So we are actually very big. We have a few hundred stores in India. So in Singapore, we have about 14 stores. So we have a mix of online and offline. So actually, we're trying to solve the problem of omni-channel. That means you can do things like click to collect. You can actually buy online and then you go to the store to collect. And so we want to integrate a lot of features like virtual 3D try-ons, where you can actually see how the 3D model of the specs looks on your face by taking a video of your face, kind of thing. So we want to, so we are actually in the midst of actually creating a brand new e-commerce system, which is much faster than the current website that we have. So we are actually building that from ground up. And we also we'll be talking, actually for me myself, I've been actually communicating very frequently with my counterparts in India, because the India team, we have about 250 developers. That's only for the India side. So I'll actually have to talk to them like how to do like scaling up of the website, then also like what's the best practices for deployment and the kind of thing, and also for the mobile app. So right now we actually want to integrate the mobile app with our website and with our offline e-commerce POS systems, everything, so that everything is all into one system, so that you can get kind of same Lenskart experience no matter whether you go online or you go offline itself. So that's actually what we are actually building for in Singapore.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
About the just a bit more about, you mentioned the product where someone can take a video of their face. Is that on your mobile app?
Yeah, it's actually on our mobile app. Also, it's on our website also.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but it's not very optimized for Singapore. So actually, we are actually changing some of the codes and so some of the integrations for Singapore, and also maybe when we roll out to other Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, we also will need to modify that. So that one takes development effort. So that's why we are hiring for people in Singapore.
What is the, yeah, curious, like what is that? What needs to be optimized for Singapore? Is it mostly like the skin tone?
Okay, so facial features, because I think for spectacles, like there's different types of fitting for different types of I say skin tone and also face shape, that kind of thing. So we have a warehouse in Singapore and also in India. So that means we actually manufacture our own eyewear and everything. So that means we can actually adjust like the size of the fitting on the bridge, on the temples, kind of thing. So we can actually optimize that for various countries, for various people. So the virtual try-on is, I would say, something that's actually a very good experience, because you can actually use the mobile app or the website, see how does the eyewear fit your face shape, or how does it fit your skin tone, that kind of thing. Then you can actually go down to the store or go and do the purchase through our website.
Cool.
Yeah, I tried the eyewear thing. It's super cool.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah, it's nice, but I think I found a few things to be improved from that. So that's why we are in the midst of actually trying to improve that.
I was curious whether you guys are doing anything with our pictures.
No, not
Getting my pictures like
that's the real business.
But we are actually trying to do something for contact lens. So instead of the virtual 3D eyewear, it's actually you can also see how does the color contact lens look on your eyes also. But that was actually something that's still in the proof of concept stage.
Wow.
Hey Gibson, I'd like to ask a question about like how about like breaking into new markets. So like how does a unicorn enter a new market or a new country and find a person to drive like tech? Essentially, like how do they end up finding you? How does that process go?
Okay, so I think for Lenskart, I would say how they launch a new market is, I think the first important hire for basically new market is basically, I think, the country manager, because the country manager knows the cultural fit, buyer behavior of the country that they are serving. So let's say you're launching in Vietnam, you can't just parachute someone from Indonesia to go to Vietnam to be the country manager. You probably need someone who is born in Vietnam or who knows the Vietnam market very well, so they can give you feedback on, like, say, buying behavior, then like things like how to spend your advertising dollars. Do you do TV or do you do web, Google search kind of thing? Then and so tell you like, okay, so like he's able to tell you like things like consumer behavior, like what's best for the particular market that you're looking at. So that person needs to be very data driven. He's able to like analyze data, ad spend, and give feedback on like, okay, so he probably tell the HQ, say, okay, based on this type of data, I know that, okay, so maybe we should spend more on TV instead of Google search, because the data shows that more people are actually coming to the website based on TV ads, that kind of thing. So that is the country manager side. Then for technical side, I would say depending on how big the market is and probably the budget of the HQ side. So I think a best way is actually to just establish a core development team in maybe Singapore or some other country. Then the core team will basically just be focused on developing the core features itself. Then they can establish another smaller development team in another country for that particular market. So let's say Vietnam, let's say Vietnam is doing very well. There's a lot of business coming in. Then they may want to establish a development team in Vietnam to cater on developing new features or functionality for the Vietnam market itself. So maybe sometimes because different buying behavior will dictate different website features. So sometimes some features that's only for Vietnam market, then the core team will just be focusing on just the core parts of the IT systems and infrastructure in the development. Then the Vietnam team will just be focusing on just creating features just for the Vietnam market itself.
Hi Gibson, Jerome, thanks for it.
Okay, hi.
Just now you were saying Porter was mentioning that he tried the 3D view, and you're saying there's something that needs to be improved. Like generally, how do you make those decisions? And what if it comes to one day where, let's say 1 or 2 weeks, you don't find anything that needs to be improved? Does that mean like the development?
Okay. Okay, that one. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. Okay, so for this, like, I would say, like, okay, so normally when we find something to improve, like, it could be anything like page speed, performance, or whatever. We need to have, for me and my team, we always try to establish like a baseline, like a minimum baseline of what needs to be reached in order to call that improvement to be a success. So it could be, let's say the 3D try-on is like maybe it takes like 3 seconds to load. And you notice that, okay, so it's a bit slow. Sometimes we want to increase the loading time to, let's say, 2 seconds, make it faster by 1 second. So that is the baseline that we approach. So we try to do various ways to increase the loading time of the 3D try-on. Maybe like changing some of the code, making some of the images smaller, the kind of things to reach that kind of baseline. But if let's say after like 2 weeks, we realize that, okay, we only reach up to like 2.2, 2.3, and then that is like the optimal way of what we can do. We try all the low-hanging fruit optimizations, and then it gives us only like 2.5 or 2.3 kind of loading speed. Then we realize that to reach the 2.0 page time loading speed, like we need to do a lot more improvements, and that will take a lot more time and effort. Maybe estimate like 3 months of work or 2 months of work. Then we say, okay, for that, then we just try to do an analysis. I'll talk to my product managers and my UX designers, say, okay, so I tell them like, okay, so like, okay, we managed to reduce the load time from 3 seconds to 2.3. So it's a lot faster now, but it's still less than what we wanted, which is the baseline of 2 seconds. That tell them like, okay, so to improve it to 2 seconds, we need to spend like another 3 months worth of work. Is it worth it? Then they'll look through the metrics. Then they'll look through things like customer feedback or the kind of stuff. Then we make a decision. We say like, okay, we'll decide whether is it worth it to just release it with these improvements of 2.3 seconds, or we want to spend more effort on working on reaching the 2.0 baseline. So that's why I say, like, for the developers, they need to be able to articulate this kind of thing well to when they talk to product managers or UX designers, so that they know like what's the pros and cons of the decision. Then they can have a better idea of how to make the decision, rather than just saying like, okay, I optimize it. Then they find out that they can't optimize it any further without spending a lot more effort. Then they don't tell anybody, just keep on doing it. Then after 3 months later, the boss will be wondering, how come this guy is like spending 2-3 months and then trying to optimize it only 5.2 seconds only, and then no one knows about it.
Thanks, Gibson. Makes sense.
Okay.
Actually, generally, so far we've been asking like how junior developers get in, but generally the developers that already work under you, right? Like, how do you assess like who's like a good engineer or what? I understand communication certainly, but in terms of the code or like what do you see?
Okay, so it's a mix. Also, a bit things like say, personality, which is like able to communicate. Then also whether they fit the culture. That one, because the last round for the Lenskart interview will be with my boss, but I also see in and so to see like how does he reply to questions, the kind of thing. Then the technical, of course, there will be the technical aspect so that we assess like the code. Like because the live coding he'll be typing out, then I'll be actually seeing like how he does his coding and how does he like debug issues, like when it comes to debugging, does he just rely on print statements or does he have another way to debug issues, kind of thing. So coding and also personality, and also I actually will ask for all the candidates like they have a GitHub profile, and then with a repository that's public where I can go in and actually take a look at their commits. So from their commits, I also can see like how they do the coding and whether their commits are actually real commits or we're just updating the README file only. That's it.
Last question. So what do you look for in a commit? What makes a good commit and a bad commit? Thanks.
Okay, so a good commit is like, commit is small. That means like maybe like 20, 30 lines of code, and probably like just only 2 or 3 files, something that's very small. Not like you commit 50 files and each file is like 100 lines of code. Then that's not a good commit, because when you do a commit, it should be in small batches and it's readable, so that anybody can go in and actually read it easily, rather than just going through it, like reading through a novel kind of thing. So I look like commits, like they see, okay, I know that this guy, he did his own project. His commit is like every time he committed, he only like commit 1 file, 2 files, and he does like maybe like 10, 20 lines of changes. So it's actually very easy to read on a per commit basis. If let's say I see like this guy, his GitHub projects, his projects, you need to update just the README on how to install the thing and just fix some typo instructions, then I know it's probably not a good developer, because he just fixes typo mistakes and just update instructions on how to install it. But I don't see much coding capability in his commits.
Thanks.
Okay.
That's a very good explanation. I'm super curious as to like what is the difference between a intern and a junior software developer?
Oh, I mean, okay. So in terms, so besides salary wise, I think so basically interns are people that are saying they can help in some aspects of the coding, but you can expect that they will need a lot of hand-holding in order to become junior developer. So junior developer, I would say like you can expect them to be semi-independent. That means like they will know some baseline coding, but in terms of how to work well in the team, in a bigger organization, they will need a lot of hand-holding, like best practices, like how to do coding for the, how to follow coding guidelines based on the company structure, that kind of stuff. So the junior developer will probably need more hand-holding in that aspect, but in terms of programming wise, they should have a very good baseline of basically being able to do some coding work itself. Maybe not the complicated stuff like say architecture design kind of thing, because that one will be under either the lead developers or the system architects to it. But if let's say I pass them, let's say I want them to create a screen where I can key in some information to save it to the database, the junior developer should be able to do that. But intern, if they don't able to do that or they're not sure, then it's not understandable, because they are still interns, so they still need to learn some coding, some of the coding stuff. But I actually have met a few interns. They're actually, I would say, they are actually very good in terms of they are able to perform on the level of a junior developer. In fact, that if they were not doing internship, I've actually offered them a job as a junior developer, but they told me that okay, they have to finish 1 more year of university before they can start work. Okay, understandable.
Okay, that helps.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Actually, earlier you touched upon the debugging skills. Sorry for the background noise.
Okay.
Debugging skills regarding debugging other than just console logging or printing. So what would be those things? Like, what are the other debugging things which you consider as best practices, maybe?
It all depends on the language. So let's say if you're using Java, then if you say you have a favorite IDE and you're able to show me that okay, you configure your IDE to able to do like proper debugging, breakpoints kind of thing, besides just printing out statements, then I think that's a very good indication that you're a good programmer, because you are able to customize your coding environment to suit your style itself. Like some developer, I see that when they do coding, they just do print statements only. Then they don't know how to do breakpoints or do not know how to inspect the variables inside the IDE. They have to tell them, oh, you actually can just put a breakpoint here to inspect your variable, to stop the program running, to see how the value is, kind of thing. So I think being able to actually show me that you have a good coding ID, you know your coding environment very well, shows that okay, you have actually been coding long enough to actually customize it to your own needs for optimal coding. That means you know how to optimize your coding, your debugging, everything. You install all the plugins to help you in your development work.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay.
I have a question about your one of your first answers. So you say ideally a candidate should show that they are interested in the developing work. So I'm just wondering if you have any recommendation on like sites or platforms that we can go to get like the latest update on like the new tech development.
Okay. So it all depends. Okay, for some of my friends, they like to subscribe to podcasts. So like some of them subscribe to this podcast called Tech Lead Podcast. So it's basically a 1 week podcast where people senior developers or tech leads will actually come and give like a talk on 1 hour on like best practices and also things like what makes a good developer, or it could be a lot of things. It could be like system architecture, it could be growth hacking, but it's all very technical based. So, but for me, I do that, and also sometimes what I do, I subscribe to this website called dev2, dv.to. So it's like a social network for developers. So I subscribe to the newsletter. So I think like every 2-3 days, they send me a list of, let's say, top 10 posts by developers. So it covers things like, say, like how to debug better in JavaScript, how to optimize your GitHub profile, or why a certain language is better than another language in terms of, let's say, for server-side coding, and why a certain framework is better than another framework. So from there, I actually read up on these articles. Like then I just see, sometimes I'll just see, there's a new new language came up with a new version. I didn't know there was a new version. Then I just go to Wikipedia or go to website and see, this new version has these new functionalities, that kind of thing. Then I'll discuss. Sometimes I just have a casual. Okay, so before work from home, I will meet up with my friends, and they're all developers. So I just have like, sometimes we have lunch or dinner. We just discuss about the new ongoings in the tech world. Could be like new system languages, new frameworks that's being released, and the kind of thing. Sometimes we just tell them, PHP just released a new version, and there's this new version and this new functionalities that is inside PHP that you can do this, do that. It's like, then I'll be like, wow, that's interesting. Then I'll just go back and Google for it and just read out about it. So I don't need to actually go to the coding part, but actually I know that these are the new things that are coming out in the tech industry, or they tell me that this new language is actually very popular right now because of certain features, that kind of thing. Then I'm like, then I'll go in and take a look, that kind of thing. So being able to keep track with this on a year-to-year or on a very regular basis is actually very useful for developers.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gibson, generally, what do as an employer, like what do you see like when students, like just now you mentioned, it was unfortunate that some of your interns had to take like go back to studies and all that.
Yes.
How about
correct.
those that do like part-time degrees generally?
Okay, so actually there was one my intern. Actually, he told me that he had to go back to university, but I told him that I told him, okay, then how about you consider working like part-time? So we pay him on a prorated basis. So he told me that his university is not 5 days a week. So he told me his uni is like maybe like Monday, Thursday, Fridays. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, he's actually free to do work for us. And I say, okay, sure. Then I told him, okay, never mind, good. Then I told him, so you just let me know. I just tell him like, okay, I told him that, okay, because I know you're studying for your degree, sometimes you have tutorials, you have classes, you have projects, kind of thing. It's very busy. So during certain periods, you just let me know, like, just give me 2 weeks advance notice, and also like every semester, just let me know like roughly which day you can commit, so I can actually plan out the projects for you and the tasks for you, so that it won't impact your studies so much. So there's one intern actually made this kind of arrangement with him, so that he can actually go back to his degree and also work for us part-time also.
Thanks, Gibson.
Yeah.
Hey Gibson, I'm also curious to take a step back from Lenskart and also think about some of the decisions you've made along your career as well. I know that you've worked across such a wide variety of companies, from the Navy to the agency to the game development to these recent startups, and then now Lenskart as well. Like, how would you compare your experiences at these different types of companies? And how would you recommend junior engineers think about what type of company they should be joining at the early stage in their career?
I would say, okay, so junior developers, early stage of career, I would say try to join, I'll recommend actually joining a small to medium-sized startup, because at the small medium-sized startup, you get exposure to a lot of different technologies. You'll be basically doing everything because it's like, because they don't have budget, so they'll be looking for people that can do development, they can do deployment, DevOps, QA, that kind of thing. So they have exposure to all these different areas. Then along the way, sometimes they may think like, oh, actually, maybe programming is good, but I prefer to do QA, or I prefer to do DevOps and deployment instead. So once they decide on that, they can actually, maybe for next career, they can actually join another company where they can specialize in the area that they're interested in. Rather than join a big company, because in a big company, because there's like thousands of developers or hundreds of developers, you'll probably be just working on one small aspect. So if you're a developer, maybe you're just working on, let's say, just doing development for this particular aspect of the app, then you won't be exposed to all the other parts of the IT system that the startup has. So you may not know what's out there that could be more interesting to you than just development-wise. So I would suggest start in a small startup, gain some experience and gain some exposure. Then from there, you have better idea of what you want to do for your career. Because IT, software engineering is one aspect. There could be things like, say, maybe they're interested in doing, like, say, managing people, or they more interested in doing product development further down the road, that kind of thing. So being a small startup gives them a lot of opportunities to have this kind of exposure.
Nice. Awesome. And for let's say that was really helpful advice. Like, how did you choose to join Lenskart, or the other companies that you chose to join recently as well? Yeah.
Okay, so actually, so Lenskart actually headhunted by an agency. They actually told me about Lenskart. Then I was like, then I read online. It's like, okay, it's a big company. They are like 200 plus engineers. So it's like, I wasn't really interested. Then they told me that actually, because the Singapore team is actually small, they don't have a technical lead in Singapore yet. So it's like starting your own technical team in Singapore to support Southeast Asia. So that was what was interesting to me, because I'm always interested in like helping startups to start a technical team, like taking technology from outsourced developers, moving in-house, hiring developers, growing the team, that kind of thing. So I told them, okay, that's quite interesting. So that was what I did my previous two companies. So that's why I went for interview with Lenskart. Then I think it was around 4 or 5 rounds of interview, 2 in Singapore, 3 in India. Then after that, within 2 weeks, they gave me an offer. Then I saw, okay, offer is reasonable, everything seems in order. So I accepted that.
Very cool.
Wow. Very impressive.
How important, this is a common question that we get as well. How important do you think it is to have a CS degree? Because I know that you also went and did a part-time CS degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So CS degree, for me personally, I don't really look at CS degree. I look at whether they can pass a technical test. Like, for example, okay, so there were a few candidates who actually offering at Lenskart. They did not have a CS degree, but they had a IT diploma. So they graduated from, I think, NYP or Ngee Poly with a diploma in IT. Then I saw their GitHub profile, pretty good, pretty interesting, and they were able to pass the test. So actually, we are in the midst of offering them offer in Singapore. So yeah, so I'll say degree probably, okay, maybe for recruiters, because they see like hundreds of resumes every day. So it's like degree probably just get you the first step, because they see, oh, NUS School of Computing, then probably they put it into the pile to be considered, that kind of thing. But then for me, I'll normally just focus on, let's say, the GitHub profile, what they have, and then if they list down their projects, if their project is something that's actually something that I use very often in my day-to-day job, it's like, oh, this guy is actually contributing to this open source project that is very popular and used by, say, millions of people around the world. And it's like, I'll tell my recruiter to put him at the top of the pile for the interview, rather than just put him in one side. So for me, it's more like what they have in terms of contributions to the open source community, and also their own internal projects, rather than the degree.
Nice.
Hi, Gibson. Just adding on to Kai's question, right? How would not having a degree would not having a degree affect your progression, like based on experience? What do you see?
Okay, from what I see, okay, so I would say, okay, so software engineering, there's probably two aspects that probably a lot of people don't really notice. One is the practical aspects, whether you can code, and the other part is the whether you have to know the, I'll say, the theoretical aspects, I say data structures and code and data structures, algorithms, kind of thing, like search functionality, like what makes a piece of code, let's say what are the different types of speed that various type of search algorithms do, and let's say you want to structure a piece of code, which type of data structure is the best type to use in terms of, say, memory usage, speed, that kind of thing. So this kind of thing, like, they emphasize and teach a lot in the university level, like NUS, they teach you this kind of theoretical stuff. Then the practical stuff, like they also teach that, but I think for coding schools, probably they focus more on the practical aspect. So for mid-career people, I think they should also focus more on the theoretical stuff. So like they need to like practice and read about things like, say, binary trees, data structures, algorithms, so that they are able to, once they go, let's say, from a junior level, because junior level you probably just do coding whatever according to what your technical lead tells you. But once you go to a higher level, let's say a senior level, you are expected to know this kind of theoretical stuff very well, because you'll be the one telling the junior developer, say, like, okay, I want you to code this part in this way, and then you need to able make sure that the coding is optimal in terms of speed, in terms of memory usage, kind of thing. So having the theoretical aspect of the computer science degree will be very useful at this stage. Once you get to a higher level.
Thank you.
Well, in terms of management, does it matter that do people care that that people have degrees in management?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So Zev was asking, is the degree important in terms of progression? And you were sharing that, okay, in terms of the technical perspective, it's important to understand these kinds of algorithms as a senior developer, so that you can kind of structure the architecture correctly for the junior developers. But I was just wondering, from a management perspective at tech companies that you've experienced, does it matter that people have computer science degrees or degrees at all?
Okay, so for my last two startups that I joined in my current startup, they don't really care about my degree, because I think, okay, so I mean, in Singapore, they always, as a formality, they all want your degree, that kind of thing. But I don't think they really factor in my degree into the interview process. They were actually asking me more my technical knowledge, and how I manage developers, and like some technical questions, like so that the technical questions will be things like system architecture. How do I architect my system to handle certain type of traffic, certain type of load, and so like some of the data structures, algorithms. But so they didn't ask so much. Not as in-depth as what you get like when you're taking a comp science exam at NUS, kind of things, because they know that I'm past that level. So more of like high-level architectural questions, but so they still ask a bit of the technical questions in depth, but it's not as intensive as when you're just studying for a comp science degree at NUS. So it's a mix of both.
Correct.
Hi, Gibson.
Yeah,
I'm just curious, because you mentioned that degree, diploma, they're not so particular to you, but will it affect the starting pay scale and all that? Because as you know, in army, in navy, you're a degree holder, you get a certain pay scale. Diploma, you start on it's on a totally different pay scale.
Okay, so for Lenskart, we don't do that. We get basically based on your technical expertise. We have a certain pay range depending on a certain expertise, and also things like, say, whether you have any experience managing a small team of people. Let's say Lenskart, you just join as a fresh grad, and your skill level is, say, skill level 1, then your pay range is within this level. But then let's say you join Lenskart as a developer, but then you actually have experience of managing, like, say, 2 or 3 people, so your pay range will be higher, that kind of thing, even though you may not have a comp science degree or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But I know in Singapore, I think a lot of employers actually, they look at, let's say you have a degree from NUS as School of Computing, then your pay will be higher than someone who has a, let's say, degree from SIM or SMU, but not in the comp science not in a comp science degree, the kind of thing. So they will, some employees will do that, but I try not to do that in Lenskart. I tell my boss is basically we should just pack according to their technical expertise rather than whether they have a degree or whatever.
Okay. And do you come across a lot of bootcamp student graduates throughout the years of being a CTO or head of engineering? Are bootcamp graduates common?
I would say that actually started being common probably around 3 years ago, something like that. Let's say ask me like 10 years ago, bootcamp graduates, I said I don't come across, but maybe 2-3 years ago, I started seeing a lot, which is actually good because Singapore, as you know, we need a lot of developers for a lot of industries, for a lot of startups. So it's good that people are actually finding that, okay, so doing a mid-career change is actually good for me because I always like to do IT, but somehow I couldn't get into NUS or I couldn't afford to go overseas to study the kind of thing. So they do a mid-career change. So I think that's quite good.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Awesome. I think we're close to the end of time. So maybe I have. Thanks so much, Gibson. That was super helpful, everyone. Maybe just one final question to wrap up. Would you have any general advice for our students here who are entering, studying really hard to get their first software engineering job and entering the tech industry for maybe the first time? What would be some general advice you might have for everyone here?
Okay, I think the general advice is that okay, so one thing I look for in applicants is that basically their GitHub profile, and also I want to see whether they have a passion for development. So one way I look at that is like their Git Commit history. So it's like if I see they graduated in, let's say, October 2020, and then from then until now there's no commit in their Git Commit history, then I presume that probably they are not interested in doing software development, that kind of thing. But then if I say the guy graduated in 2020 December, then every week since, I say, from January to June, I see he has do 2 or 3 commits on his own personal project. I can see that this guy is a mid-career, but he is very passionate about programming. I'll ask him for interview, even though he may not be applying to my company, but I'll just ping him on LinkedIn or whatever, say, hey, I'm hiring developers. You want to consider joining Lenskart as a software developer or full stack engineer? So I think one thing is always keep learning and always keep keep yourself updated with the new technologies and new skills that's always coming out in the IT industry, because every year, every month, there's new JavaScript frameworks, there's new languages coming out. So you don't need to actually do it to understand it, but it's good that you've actually read about it and know what is it about and how it can be useful in the future. That is actually good enough. But if you can actually hands-on and do some development work on it, that's even better. But of course, there's too many to do, so you just have to pick and choose whatever you're interested in and just work on it.
It's amazing. Thank you so much, Gibson.
Okay.
So
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
A good one. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Yeah.